I open now the floor for any question you may have from the audience. And in particular to Harish Lino, but we're also open for any other questions relating with the above mentioned topic. I'm taking this as a no question from the audience, so that means that Lino and Harish, you explain it very, very well.
Or that nobody understands anything.
The latter.
Okay. Was everything clear regarding the profiles chapter mentioned at the end? And the subject of Svein? Would you like to comment on something, chapter Svein?
Yeah, maybe it makes sense to recap. So you were seeing in the first session and in the second session, we went through a list of changes. And I hope that you now get the message home that it's not really that much of a change. So we see individual profiles here and there changes. That's why we call it as a service pack of CGMES 2.4. Of course, any change could be a huge change, but we were careful not to do those. And it should be really encouraged that with any next modification of your system, try to move your models to CGMES 3. Experiment, because if you keep the same level of modeling detail, it's really very easy to get to a CGMES 3 conformance of that export. You shouldn't confuse that going to CGMES 3 means substantial modeling change. So there's no data exchange standard that will drive your content of the model. So there, I think, big misunderstanding in the community saying, yeah, I'm going to CGMES 3, well, I need to change my SCADA. So no, if you keep the same model of detail, if you don't have power electronics, yeah, it will be nearly conversion with the same amount of classes you're using. It's totally different if you have a business process.
You have the case where you do have power electronics, but you choose not to use it.
Yeah.
So that's a very crucial. The point that you have the ability now to do power electronics, and that is needed if you're going to do dynamics. But it's not forcing you to model it this way. I mean, it's recommended that you are moving in this way. So that goes with all things, and the same with HVDC. That we have added stuff. So you can see it a little bit that the dictionary has been bigger. Doesn't mean that you have to use all the new words that's coming in the dictionary. But it gives you the possibility to do that. So there needs to be some kind of agreement around it. And we will also give a little bit advice on the different business process on the best way to deal with it. But clearly what we need is to have the tool vendor, if they are supporting the full CGMS, then there will not be a problem, because then you can use all the vocabulary. But as we are moving forward, so we're a little bit surprised that so many are saying there's so much challenge with the new stuff. We don't quite understand what that is, what's driver for that.
Yeah, and the driver of the challenge is the business process, because the business process is the one requiring different level of detail. And if you don't have a standard that enables you to provide that detail, then you cannot conform to the business process. And there we have a problem.
Yeah, so all the changes has either been driven for aligning what's happening in the standard in general, and also with all the challenge that has been the rise for the 2.4. So in general, this is, as Chara is saying, a service pack. And we try to do as little changes as possible, but making it a solid foundation to build additional data that we need to exchange to meet the network codes, and particularly also to help out for the DSO, TSO.
I see here one topic from Tanya suggesting that it may be useful to clarify or to summarize, on boundary, what is still supported in version 3, like in version 2.4, and what is new. So for that.
Yeah, so in general, everything that can be done in 2.4 should be able to be done in 3. So it's minor conversion in a way by adding the boundary point as a pointer. So some of the data is then moved from the connectivity node to the boundary. This makes it all much more model driven. So that's a small fix. Then we are constraining that you can you don't have the data constrained by the profile, because you need to make it additional to the general EQ. So that leads it all. And again, tool vendor only need to support that if it's needed by the customer they are using in a way. I don't know if that's sufficient, Tanya, or you want to have more detail, but I think that was a kind of a clear summary.
Very clear. Thanks. It's useful to spell it out to show exactly that we talk about service pack and not a dramatic change.
Yeah. And basically, trying to fix because the 2.4 way is not having model driven, because you are adding data depending on the profile, and that's a big, was a big mistake, and we needed to fix it.
Tanya,
I guess maybe still just maybe one or two sentences about the connectivity nodes and topological nodes, without talking about what kind of model you have. If you have model with exclusively topological nodes today, the very easy fix is just to add one connectivity node for each of your topological nodes and to link it to the same terminal to which you have topological node, for instance, in order to be able to exchange.
And bear in mind that some vendors always, because that was an optional flag, so some models include that. And these models, there are no changes.
Exactly. For those, there are no changes. For node breaker model, let's say the full ones, like what people export normally from SCADA or EMS, or where you have detailed connectivity modeling, there is no change. There is change with respect to the topology altogether, only for those who have exclusively topological nodes, and there are some models like this. And for those, the easy fix is, as I said, two things. You add one connectivity node, persistent one per topological node, and you link it exactly the same terminal where you originally have your topological node. To stress, in fact, that Steph's very first bullet point, where he said, I wrote it for you to read and reread. So it means there is no requirement to have node breaker models, detailed representation whatsoever. You continue doing exactly the same way it was done so far. In principle, if you need to link measurements like what he said, it's the same as before. You have retained switches. If you need, after topology processing, to have difference of, like angle difference at the switch. If you need to know if, for instance, if your line is open on one side. So that's where you do want to have retained switch. So you have retained switch wherever you need that detail after topology processing, irrespective of what model you are using. Bus branch node breaker, any version.
And it also gives you the chance to have an agile approach if you want to go to a node breaking model, that you can then focusing on doing the part of the model that's most relevant, which is typically close to the border to your neighbor, and that is also could be very, very helpful for how you move forward, and that's not possible in the previous model because you either have to decide it to be a node breaker or bus branch.
Okay, thank you both for clarifications. Thank you, Daniel, for the question. Any more questions regarding conformity or profiles?
We either made it so clear, or we have give them too much information and they're information overload.
Yeah, maybe
So-
a few words on the conformity. So that's there to help you, especially the utilities, not to be constantly debugging small things that you are getting from not perfect or not many tools with that undergone a lot of testing. So you have some kind of guarantee that you have a basic conformity or basic coverage on the standard. There will be always some sort of testing necessary when you integrate it in your environment, when you test with real data, but that's why we have then the SAT part of the conformity.
Yeah, and we could also encourage, I mean, we do have quite a bit of test models, and there has been TSOs that has contributed with their test model so that we get more realistic cases. And for all the TSO that's on here, and for that matter, vendors, we are happy to get input, how we can improve the models and get a better coverage. A little bit the challenge is if we have too many models, we need to maintain them, making sure that they're updated with the newer versions. So we would like to try to have models that can cover a whole range of tests. So, if people can contribute, that is always good, because the idea is that we can check the software against known data, where we later can then test the data for real data. Test the application against real data.
Yeah, and also you get the chance to validate the data change in the IOP, if I can add on that. If there is no more questions, technical questions, then I can clarify that these recordings will be available, and also the presentations. We will share them in the following days, within this week for sure, and we will indicate also as soon as possible, as soon as we can get these videos published, ideally on YouTube. We will also communicate that through the same email list. With all that said, and if there is nobody else wanting to intervene, I think we can close the session. Thank you for participating and for getting interested, for being interested, sorry, in this training. And hopefully that was helpful for all of you. To many of you, I hope. See you in the IOP in May here in Brussels. So yeah, thank you everybody for your attention and for your time.